Talk high school football, 4A, 3A, and 2A in Texas. We talk East Texas sports. We talk NFL, guy talk, movie, and booze. We also talk wrestling and so much more. So like and subscribe and check us out. Football season, and that means it's bug season. Heck, who am I kidding? It's always bug season in Texas, and that's why you need Grandeur Pest Solutions in your corner. They're locally owned and operated. They're trained, they're trustworthy, and they have a proven record as they have been in business for almost 10 years. They provide pest control against ants, bed bugs, bees, roaches, fleas, wasps, mosquitoes, rodents, spiders. If it crawls and you don't like it, they're probably going to take care of it for you. Now, they serve all of the Dallas-Fort Worth area, and they're locally owned. These two guys have been running this business since 2013, and every year they get bigger and bigger. But you know what they still do? They still have great customer service. In fact, if you get a hold of them, they're usually going to have your quote and your job ready to go within 48 hours. That's pretty good. Now, you can call them for a free estimate at 469-809-1769. You can find them online at Grandeur4, that's the number 4, shore.com. You can also find them on Facebook. Just type in Grandeur Pet Solutions, and we are so happy that they're title sponsor for Outdrank the Coverage in 2023. Is your demanding work lifestyle in need of fire-resistant clothing that can keep up? Well, L4FR clothing should be your go-to for quality, affordability, safety, and style. L4FR was founded by a third-generation oil field worker who is also a veteran. Thus, this company has a deep appreciation for reliability and longevity, all while we provide first-rate customer service. Our durable apparel will serve you well for many years to come, whether you're working on a pipeline, a lineman climbing utility poles, or in any other environment requiring fire-resistant apparel. L4FR has you covered. Our apparel is tough enough to resist hazardous conditions while still providing high comfort and style. L4FR provides clothing options to ensure your safety and comfort, whether you're on the job or not. To view our complete inventory of flame-resistant garments, please visit our online store at l4frclothing.com or give us a call at 817-757-4935. See
Hey, I mean, that was a good point.
I think we might start seeing some go back. It is welcome to the jungle as it's time to talk NFL football. Hello, everybody. Terry Bennett, intern Nohe, here to talk some NFL. More importantly, NFC, as we're going to be doing our NFC preview, brought to you by Grandeur Pest Solutions right here on L4 Media. First, before we do all that, intern Nohe, how are you doing? What are you drinking?
What's up, Terry? I'm doing well. How are you, buddy?
I'm doing pretty good.
Good. Today, I decided to go wine. I'm drinking a red wine from California called Agitator.
Hang on. I saw the post that you put on Outdrank the Coverage. By the way, you can find us on Facebook, Outdrank the Coverage. I got to admit, it confused me. I saw bourbon, I saw barrel, I saw wine. So are you sure it's a real wine?
It's wine that's aged in bourbon barrels to give it that a little bit of sweetness that you get from whiskey. Yeah. It's from California. It's 15.5% alcohol, or 15.9% alcohol. Yeah. But yeah, I enjoy it. I really don't have wine as much anymore. But yeah, this is pretty good, nice and buttery, which is kind of what you want with a red wine. And yeah, I like it a lot. How about you, man? What are you drinking today?
Well, okay, so I'm a little bit of a bitch. I do this every year. You know this every year before the season begins. I don't just talk NFL and Big 12. I keep forgetting we're going to do some Big 12 shows this year.
Yeah.
But before the week before our high school season starts here in Texas, I like to take a vacation, and so me and the well, I'll just go ahead and say it now. Me and the fiance, we went down to Corpus Christi.
Congratulations.
Thank you. We went down to Corpus Christi, a place that you know very well, Mustang Island.
Yes.
And I basically drank every day. In fact, I think I messaged you something on Saturday at about 4 p.m. This will be the last post or last message I will send you sober, and that's pretty much how I am. So I'm not drinking. I outdrank the coverage so much last week that I'm still out drinking the coverage now. I'll admit the one thing I feel now in my age is I'm still feeling last week, but I found this in Corpus Christi. This is water. Now, during football Sunday, at some point, Jenny has already challenged me to pour a whole bottle of vodka in this and drink it on a NFL Sunday, which I will do. But yeah, I found this cool thing in Corpus. The blue tape is mine. It's one of those things like from here to here on the inside is all one thing, but it's so big and unstable they had to make it seams here and they're falling apart. So I could still drink for it, but the top would always be doing that. So I did some of my East Texas ingenuity and got the cowboy blue tape and taped it up. But yeah, so tonight I'm just drinking water. Plus I want to be sober for all my picks because I went back and listened to last year's. I don't know if you had known or paid attention. You probably don't pay attention to me because I don't pay attention to me. But I had outdrank the coverage pretty good because we recorded those two in a row, and I actually had like nonsensical like 4 teams from 3 divisions making the playoffs at some point. Because that's what I do. I get really excited when I'm talking previews. Even for our team, the Cowboys, and really even all teams except for the Eagles, I always tend to see the most positive aspect of their season, and so I wanted to work on that. And not do that this year. So that's why I'm not out drinking the coverage. That's the excuse I'm going to go with by law. But anyway, what we're going to be doing tonight is, as I said, we're going to be talking about the NFC. We're going to record next week and do a AFC, and then we're going to have a couple weeks break, and then we'll be ready to talk actual football. But before we get into each district, say I'm already on the high school. Before we get into every division and before we talk about who's advancing and all, just give me your 2023 view of the NFC as in totality.
Honestly, I don't want to sound like every other analyst, but it just sounds like a 3-team race with about 5 or 6 teams going to make significant improvements, but they're not going to be as good as San Francisco, Philadelphia, or Dallas.
Yeah, and I agree with that. I do think, though, that the NFC is going to end up better. And I'm sorry if you're hearing all that, people. I can't help some of the notifications. But I think the NFC is actually going to be better than what people are saying. I don't think it's going to – I think at the end of the year it's going to be more than those 3 teams. And I don't know. And yes, it could be – I could be talking about Dallas. I just have a feeling with the way football is now and the way it runs, I have a feeling we're going to have a couple of the teams from that middle pack come up and then maybe maybe even 2 teams from that top 3 come down. Now, they could still end up being as a 2nd or 3rd seed, but I just don't know if we're going to see Dallas, San Francisco, and Philadelphia all have the records like they did last year.
Yeah, I mean, with change in the offseason comes that. I don't think Philadelphia is going to be 14-3 this season, and I'm not sure what Washington's record is going to be. If you look at Detroit, everybody thinks they're going to win the division. Who knows? Who knows what the loss of Jamal Williams is going to be on them?
Yeah, I mean, that's those little things that you really can't really know until the season starts. And you're always – and go ahead and tell everybody now, even though it'll be a few weeks, I think it's 20 days till the NFL starts. The first week, just don't pay attention. Like, no matter who wins, who loses, the first week you're gonna have that guy that scores 2 touchdowns that he never sees the field again. You're gonna have a couple teams that you can kind of tell that they've been using camp to get ready, like a Lions Chiefs. I want to say that in my mind, the Chiefs will probably win by 2 touchdowns, but it would not shock me because the Super Bowl winning team tends to struggle on that Thursday night, unless it's Dallas playing them, apparently. But usually they struggle. And you can even make the case 2 years ago that Dallas and Tampa Bay, I mean, that was a hell of a game. I could see the Lions winning that game and everybody, because they're already the toast of the NFL. We'll talk about that. But I could see them winning that game and that fever pitch getting even higher. And then they come down because spoiler alert, I don't have the Lions as high as everybody else. I think that there's still a lot of questions about them, but we'll talk about that here now. I was about to go to break. We don't do breaks on these shows anymore. By the way, we are on YouTube. If you found us through a link at L4 Media Company, you can also find the audio only at outdrinkthecoverage.com. All right, intern Noe, let's jump into it. We're going to start with the NFC North. Of course, last year the Vikings won it 13-4. Maybe, and I'm high on the Vikings this year, and we'll talk about that here in a second. I mean, high is relative. I'm not like putting them in the Super Bowl, or I would be high. But I think that might be one of the worst 13-4 teams that we saw. Maybe since the 10-6, 85 Dallas Cowboys. Bing! I got the reference in.
Yeah, I mean, Minnesota was 11-0 in one-score games, and as we know, in the offseason, they fired their defensive coordinator, Donato, and they hired a new guy, a guy I really like, Brian Flores. Usually with teams that win close games, it doesn't happen in consecutive years, so I could see that reversing to maybe a 500 record in one-score games. Where do you want to start? Do you want to start from the bottom to the top for 2023? Like, what do you want to do? How do you want to approach this?
So why don't we do this? Pulling back the curtain, we actually started this, had some technical issues, so we started this part over. Just give me in reverse order your NFC North teams, and then I'll give you mine, and then we'll discuss.
Okay. Bringing up the rear, Chicago. I think they'll be 7-10. And third place, I think it'll be Minnesota, 8-9. Green Bay should finish second, around 9-8, 10-7. I'm still undecided on Jordan Love right now, but I think he'll be pretty good. And then my 2023 North Division champ, Detroit Lions. I think they'll be 11-6.
Wow, I like that. Everybody's hot on Detroit. I am not. So let me go ahead and give you mine, and then we'll go from there. I've got Green Bay 7-10. I do think that this whole division is very competitive, and for all the jokes outside of Chicago last year, you had a really great team at the top and a really bad team at the bottom, but then you had two solid teams in the middle, and it made it competitive. But I think this year it's really, really competitive. I've got Green Bay 7-10. I've got Detroit 8-9. I've got Chicago at 10-7, and then I have Minnesota still winning the division, but it won't be as good of a record. I could see them 11-6. I think Chicago is the most improved, and it's not even necessarily that I believe that Justin Fields is a great quarterback, but I think what he can do on the ground is going to give so many issues in a division that this isn't the old black and blue North NFC Central or all defenses are great. None of these defenses are really great. You have good aspects in all of them, but I think you're going to see a lot of offense in this division, and I think Justin Fields' legs is going to get them up to 10-7 into the playoffs. I'm not buying the Detroit hype. I just, how many times have we seen this? Detroit will close out a season, 3 of 5 wins, and everybody's like, oh, this year they might be. And then the next year they can't do it. And so until I see them do it, I'm just not. I don't think that they improved that much from last year.
The big question is, will their first round pick, Jahmyr Gibbs, Alabama running back, will him and newly acquired running back David Montgomery from Chicago, are they going to be a better 1-2 punch than DeAndre Swift and Jamal Williams?
Yeah, that's a good question. And by the way, I am so 100% on record of saying that I do not understand that draft pick for Detroit. Not in that spot. You literally could have drafted, or you could have traded down, got some capital, and picked him up. Nobody was picking him up before the 20s. And I don't even know if anybody was picking him up in the 20s. I just felt that Detroit, I get the idea of, hey, if that's your guy, you go for him. Yes, but if you can literally trade down and get assets back and still get him, you do that. And I kind of feel the same way about Jack Campbell too. I think Jack Campbell's a really good linebacker, but I just felt that they overdrafted on both of those, and I think that that's going to really cost them. I think both of them will be solid players, but there's missing assets. So again, this is a team that defensively, they're basically replacing their whole secondary. You got CJ Gardner-Johnson coming in, Cameron Sutton, Emmanuel Mosley. Really solid players, but how will they gel together? You had their they lost some guys we talked about. We lost Jamal. They lost DeAndre Swift. They lost Jeff Okudah. Now, of course, he got hurt and where he's at now, so maybe that's not a big deal, but you never know if he got hurt when he was in Detroit. So that's why I'm kind of low on Detroit, or not low. I just don't think I'm as high as everybody else. I've seen some people, like people that are valued people in predicting this kind of stuff, putting them in the Super Bowl. And I think that's and it's fun to have that hype. Every year it's fun to have that hype for any team, and especially a team. I mean, that's the whole reason. And by the way, kudos to the NFL for scheduling them that first game. I would rather see the first game every year, if it can be done, that your Super Bowl winner is playing at home on Thursday night against what is considered the next upstart team, instead of just playing another, oh, that's a great team. Because first off, if another great team is on that Super Bowl team schedule, I want them to play a few weeks later when everybody's kind of gotten into the rhythm of playing football. I hate opening week big games like that, because it just, you're getting two teams that aren't, they're not football ready. And I don't want to see a Buffalo versus KC or a Dallas versus Philly or any of those in the first week. So I love the fact that it is Detroit. And I think Detroit might win that game. We talked about it in the other one before we had to start over, that, hey, don't look at week one. In that game especially, Super Bowl winners tend to play down that week, that first week of the season. And then you're going to have, Campbell has got the Lions already watching KC game film.
Yeah, 100%. I think they'll be very prepared for that Kansas City game. They'll probably still lose, but this is a team that was really good on offense. And going back to what you said about the draft picks, I kind of agree with you there. Their first two picks were reaches. Their last or their next three were actually, I think they were picked.
I like the last three a lot.
Huh? Yeah, and these are just key picks. Sam Laporta, tight end from Iowa. Brian Branch, I think he was taken later than he should have been. And then Hendon Hooker, Jared Goff. Okay, let me back up. 2022 was kind of a weak year for NFC quarterbacks. You would say Jared Goff and Geno Smith were the top 5 in the conference last season. That's how weak it was. And he's under 30. He had a great comeback year for Detroit. So there's a lot of expectations going into this season. I like C.J. Gardner-Johnson on defense, kind of being their young veteran vocal leader, like the locker room leader for that defense, kind of showing them how to play defense.
Yeah, he's old school talk trash type. Like as soon as he left New Orleans, he trashed their fans. As soon as he left Philly, he trashed their fans. I know a lot of people were like, "Well, that's not respectful." That's his thing. That's what he does. He's the us against the world mentality, and so if he leaves Detroit, he's going to trash their fans. I think he purposely does that as a way to tell his new fans, I'm ride or die with y'all now. I'm not ride or die with the Eagles, because some organizations, you get that. You do. And Philly, I'll give Philly for all the credit. When you play for Philly, there's a family feel about that program. And so I think there are sometimes questions when somebody either leaves because they're cut salary-wise or they take more money. You always get that question, but is it going to be as passionate? And I think the way Gardner does that, I think is a good way to get the Detroit fans, all 10 of them, to love him.
Yeah. What do you think about Green Bay and their youth movement? I know Aaron Rodgers is the big, sexy name that's departed the team, but they kind of had a lot of draft picks. They didn't really make many offseason moves. They let go of a lot of veterans. Even saying all that, I really like the talent, even though they're inexperienced. Usually receivers in year 2 kind of start showing their progress. So I'm really curious to see what Christian Watson and Romeo Doubs do for Jordan Love. I kind of was happy that they got Luke Musgrave from Oregon State. What are your thoughts on the Packers this year?
I think overall, in the NFL, they're the team that it wouldn't shock me if they won the division, and it wouldn't shock me if they won 5 games. I think there's such a high ceiling, low floor for this team. I think they're going to be fun to watch. I think it's, just like when Aaron Rodgers replaced Brett Favre, it was fun to see a new guy at Green Bay. And to be honest with you, we can make all the jokes we want about Jordan Love and what people think, but they were all making the exact same jokes about Aaron Rodgers. And, he came in, of course, the famous game against Dallas where he played well, but Dallas beat him in 2007. And then, after Favre left from then, he just took off. I'm not going to doubt the Green Bay Packers front office for drafting quarterbacks over the last 35 years. So why would I draft them now? And I think Jordan Love has a lot of the physicality and the abilities to be a quarterback, but you're not going to be able to do with with what you do with Aaron Rodgers and give him low end wide receivers and let Aaron Rodgers throw them open all day and then cut them and move on to the next. I mean, you go look at the list of and they've done that all the way since Brett Favre. You look at all the ones since it's like Sterling Sharp created this thing inside the Green Bay locker room because everybody knows that Sterling Sharp, if he'd have stayed healthy, I legitimately think he might have challenged some of Jerry Rice's records. He was that good. The problem is and Sterling Sharp will tell you this. Sterling Sharp was very much about I'd rather me have a big day and we lose than the team win and I have a bad day. I mean, he was very open about that. And so it feels like that once he had to retire, it feels like Green Bay has worked their hardest to not have diva wide receivers. And that's great and all, but you just can't hope Jordan Love, because I don't know how good Christian Watson's really going to be. How good would he have been without an Aaron Rodgers? You know, this isn't a guy that was high on anybody's radar. He wasn't a top 3 pick. He wasn't somebody that everybody was like, man, when he gets to the pros, he's going to be a stud. In fact, you can make the case that Dallas game is kind of the game that really opened everybody up to him when he had the 3 touchdowns. So I think that is the biggest problem. I don't think they don't have a quarterback, at least to start, that can crutch them like an Aaron Rodgers could, or even a Brett Favre could in the late 90s or early 2000s. So I think that's the biggest issue. We're completely different on this division. I'm surprised you were so lackadaisical when I said I have Chicago second and possibly making the playoffs.
Like I said, they remind me of the Jets from last year. The Jets were 5-2 until Breece Hall got hurt, and they had no quarterback, so they were doomed. And they still finished 7-10. But with Chicago, they have a running quarterback who could be a passing quarterback in the NFL. They supplied him with a very skilled player in DJ Moore, and he's getting some help on defense. Chicago got Tremaine Edmonds and TJ Edwards, and I really feel that that's going to shore up some of their run defense issues. My big issue is, though, they still don't have a pass rush. So I think that's going to be reason to believe that they're going to struggle in some key games against really good teams. But it wouldn't shock me if they finished 10-7. But I'm just trying to be more realistic.
So I'm not being realistic. Wow. Truth comes out.
I love what they draft. I love who they drafted. I think Roschon Johnson's going to be one of the best late picks in this draft. I think he's going to supplant Deontay Foreman next year as the powerhouse running back.
The same backfield. I got the vapors.
Yeah. So I like what Chicago did. I think they're going to have a pretty fun. I think it'll be fun to watch. And I'm just looking at everything else. If Brian Flores makes Minnesota's defense 15th or 16th in the NFL instead of 30th or worse, they could be just as good as they were last year. They'll just look different.
And they got 2 great, linebackers with Edwards and Edmonds. But as I said, nobody in this division is going to have a strong defense. I mean, this division's going from the black and blue to the run and shoot. You're going to have a bunch of 35-31 type games. And I think, if you want to talk, we talked about Minnesota last year, 11-0 and 1-score games. Man, that Justin Fields type rushing quarterbacks, man, they are the most killer when it's 3 minutes left and you need to stop them. And they've got 65 yards in all their timeouts because they can literally run for 30 of the yards, and you're just going to let them have that. And then you have to start making decisions. So that's what I don't know. I think this is going to be, I think all of the NFC, well, hell, it's football. We think all of both conferences, but I really think the NFC NFC North is just going to be a blast to watch when it's in those interdivisional games. All right, so we go from the NFC North. Let's go all the way past that OMS Mason-Dixon line and go to the NFC South. And I'm going to say it all again. You have 4 teams that are big changes. They're all exciting. Only one of them, maybe 2, seems to play defense this year. I think just like last year, I think the records will be better than last year, but I think just like last year, it's going to be close for the top 3, maybe even all 4 teams this year.
I think the division winner will have a winning record. Let's look. Okay, so I guess we'll do the same thing we did with the North. To me, I feel bringing up the rear will be Tampa. They had a lot of veterans leave. I mean, Brady, Leonard Fournette, Julio Jones, Cameron Brate, Donovan. I mean, it's a lot of veteran players. And some of their signings, they're more to fill in the gaps. Baker Mayfield to challenge Kyle Trask for the starting quarterback job. Chase Edmonds to be some sort of a running RB2 behind Rashad White. Matt Fielder. They lost a lot of guards too. Shaq Mason was one of them. They lost tackle Donovan Smith and tackle Josh Wells. They weren't really the greatest of lines last year, but I think injuries kind of played a role in that. So I just don't see. I see that I think there's too many losses. So I think they'll come up at the rear about 6-11, 7-10. But there's hope for them. A little bit above them will probably be Carolina. They'll probably finish about 7-10, which they did last year. But I think with Frank Reich coming in, the Denver guy, Ajiro, I think I pronounced his name correctly, maybe. They got Miles Sanders. This kind of a nice little start for first overall pick, Bryce Young from Alabama. You got Von Bell, Adam Thielen, veteran leadership on offense, DJ Shark, Hayden Hurst. So I kind of like what they did in the offseason. They got Jonathan Mingo in the draft. Is a really good receiver. Really good receiver from Ole Miss. So I think this will be a year in transition. I think Frank Reich, he's going to have an opportunity to actually have his quarterback for more than 1 year. And remember, he started in 2018 with the Colts.
Yeah,
and he had one of the best quarterbacks, Andrew Luck, and then he decided to retire after that year because
that's what happened when you never get an offensive line for him. And that wasn't Frank Reich's problem. That was even before him. That was honestly, they had gotten used to the Peyton Manning style of quick releases, and that he had a great offensive line that aged out, and they legitimately ran Andrew Luck into the ground. We could say that about, as Cowboy fans, we can say that about Romo, but Romo at least had multiple years. We had really good lines. The Colts never had a good line, even when Andrew was taking them to an AFC title game.
Yep. So, I think it'll be a year in transition for them. I think they'll finish about the same as last year, but they're gonna be one of those teams to look out for in 2024. Second place, I think it's going to be, as much as I'd like what New Orleans did with Derek Carr and Jamal Williams, I'm going to have to put them second.
You and I are very different on this one.
I really like what the Saints have done. They have a really good defense. They're at probably their last legs. They're all the best players in their early 30s. I do like Derek Carr coming to New Orleans to be back with his first coach, Dennis Allen. I think this will be an offense that suits him more. I can't trust that Michael Thomas is going to play the whole season.
I don't even know if he wants to anymore.
And I don't know. Yeah, I know he's 30 years old, still young, but he seems like he phoned it in when he signed that contract. Jamal Williams is a great get for the backfield. Kendra Miller being drafted, it'll be great for them to be. So when Kamara's back, it'll be 3 good running backs in that backfield. So at least it'll take some pressure off of Carr. He has a pretty solid offensive line still. I like Foster Moreau. I think he's had a clear results for Hodgkin's lymphoma. So he was a really good tight end in Oakland, Las Vegas. So I'm really excited about that. Kalen Saunders comes from KC. He'll be shoring up some of the depth issues they had along the defensive line. I like what they've done, but I still feel that I'm really, really happy about what Atlanta's done. I think they're going to win the division. I think they'll get to 10 wins. Let me look at what they did. The defense was a problem for them. So what do? They addressed it all essentially in the free agency. They got Jesse Bates III from Cincinnati, Calais Campbell, great veteran defensive tackle. He came from Baltimore. David Onyemata, Bud Dupree, who needs a comeback year. Trey Flowers, cornerback. Mike Hughes, cornerback. Jeff Okuda, cornerback. Caden Ellis, Luther Ellis's boy, a linebacker. So they got a lot of talent on defense, and I think they're going to try to really address that issue. And, of course, the big one in the draft, they got Bijan Robinson, who was probably the only true first-round pick.
Yeah.
At running back. And I think they're going to use him all over the field. I'm really excited what they're going to do with him. I think he'll be a guy that gets about 1,500 all-purpose yards, maybe 700 rushing, 700 receiving. I just love the match. I think it's going to create a lot of opportunities for Pitts and London at tight end and receiver, respectively.
I agree with your bottom two. I still think they're flipped. First off, I think this. I don't know if it's as big of a jump as the NFC East had last year, but I think this division is again better. And I know we said that about the North, but I think it is. I still think I don't know. Something just tells me that Carolina might take a small step back, but they're going to be okay long term. I still think the Bucks they're not great, but I think they have just enough defense to muck it up. And if Baker Mayfield plays within himself, he can be a really, really good bus driver. It's just he's got to accept that. If he can accept that like he did for the 1 year in Cleveland when they made the playoffs, then he could be fine. Where you and I differ on is I think the Saints, we said at the very beginning when we talked about the NFC, I think the Saints have the best chance to leap into the top three. I think with that defense, yeah, they're old, but I think it's still a really good defense. I think Derek Carr, I feel like Derek Carr is almost Matthew Stafford. You're going to see something just completely different when he goes to the Saints, even though he's going to put up the same stats. It's just going to look different because he has a team around him. I like Atlanta, but I feel like those defensive changes, that's a lot of old players they brought in. A lot of great players, but a lot of old players. And how many times in the NFL do we see a team reload one side of the ball with vets and you go, oh, man, they're really good all of a sudden. And then just it doesn't happen, whether it be some injuries or they don't gel. And also, let's be honest, how many games is it before Taylor Heineke's the quarterback? I don't know if Atlanta – I think a lot of people are looking at the Robinson pick and some of the players around him, but like Cordell Patterson's another year older. And he's a guy that last year he was hurt all the time. He came back, had a big kickoff return, and then didn't do anything else really the last year. Believe me, I know he was on my fantasy. But I don't know. Atlanta just feels to me like I could still see them sliding down into the 8-9, 9-8, which could still win this division. I do think the winner is with a winning record, but I think if the Saints do it, I think it'll be, then you could see them be kind of like the Vikings last year. 13-4, 12-5. If they don't, I still think they're in contention with a 9-8, 8-9 type of year.
Yeah, they'll be in contention until the final week or two, in my opinion. You know, my favorite draft picks who I wanted the Cowboys to get was probably going to be the next Aaron Donald and Kalijah Kancey.
Yes.
I think he's he's about the same size as Donald, went to the same college, another disruptive tackle. So, yeah, I could definitely see the Buccaneers defense carrying them for most of the season. They might squeak out a couple extra wins that they typically would not have gotten. And typically in the over 100-year history of the NFL, you usually go with the team that has the better quarterback. And, yes, New Orleans has the best quarterback in this division. Yeah. Desmond Ridder is still unproven. He was 2-2 last year. They were more of a running team. But he is the clear number one. Heineke is a capable backup quarterback. He was a capable starter last year. He was I think 5-3-1 last year as a starter. So he's still a solid guy. So it's good that they have depth at that position.
Yeah, but I don't know if you're Taylor Heineke, and I think you and I were talking about this last time we hung out. I think he has the biggest chance to be the new Ryan Fitzpatrick. I thought Baker Mayfield would, but Baker Mayfield just isn't. He's a bus driver. And to be a Ryan Fitzpatrick, you need to be a bus driver at times, but you need to be a gunslinger. And the worst thing, though, is for a team is if Ridder is struggling or if Ridder misses a game, and let's say the Falcons are 1-2 and he misses that game 4 and Heineke goes out and throw for 300 yards and 3 touchdowns, that's going to be great, but the fans are going to love Taylor Heineke. He's going to endear himself. He's that type of player. And that sounds great, but, man, a lot of times when that's your backup and you're trying to develop your front guy, that can cause some issues. And I just have a feeling by week 8, it's Taylor Heineke's team. Not maybe for the future, but at least for the rest of this year.
I could see if they're like 3-5, 4-4, and all their losses were because of the quarterback. Yeah, I mean, who knows? I mean, you do have to win. Like, you can't just say – you can't do what Tom Coughlin did in 2004 and take a 5-4 team and to decide, okay, I'm going to bench Kurt Warner. Yeah. I'm going to let Eli start because I want him for the long term.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a good point,
So
actually. But I mean,
same thing with Carolina.
But if you're sitting at 4-4, and even if you're 2-6, but in this conference, let's say, or this division, let's say the Saints haven't taken off and they're mucking around at 4-4, and you're 2-6. I mean, that's literally what the Panthers did last year. They just did it with a coach, and they almost crawled themselves back into the playoffs. It's kind of funny. All the people talked about, oh, we don't need that 17th game, but man, it really has changed because the difference in 9-8 and 8-8 and 10-7 and 9-7 are huge. I mean, we're talking playoff. That's why you and I joked. I mean, outside of injuries, Dallas with 17 games should never miss the playoffs. I mean, you just because they're always right there. But yeah, so I said, I know we said about the North, but and it's the kind of the trend of the NFC. I think this is a fun division. I think this is a division that when it's red zone and you and I, we're going to be peeking over it when it's the Falcons and the Panthers, and when it's the Saints and the Falcons and the Buccaneers.
Like the old WAC conference from back in the 90s.
It kind of feels like all of the NFL except for the East is like that. The East feels like, and then of course San Francisco. The East and San Francisco all have good defenses. Even the Commanders. Sorry, wait, what are they? But let's now go to
the team from Washington.
The team from Washington Football Club with the skins that are not white. But let's now go to the NFC West, and we put this as second to last, mainly because of San Francisco.
What a short period of time, man. All four of these teams 2 years ago were considered playoff caliber.
Well, and that's when I think it's really stupid. Like 2 years ago, when people say in the NFC East they should not be allowed to make a playoffs. Dude, this stuff is so cyclical. And I don't believe the NFC East is the strongest division in the NFL. I know a lot of people do. I still think a lot of last year was fool's gold with certain teams, not the top two, but other teams. But we'll talk about that here in a second. This one, I think, is going to be a crappy division outside of San Francisco. I'll go ahead and I'll lead first. I have the Cardinals.
Oh.
Yeah. No, you roll. I have the Cardinals may be historically bad. And not just because Kyler Murray. In fact, Kyler Murray might be the thing, if he can get right, might be the thing that could keep them afloat for a little while. But this whole, you just with what they're doing and what they've done, this is a team that basically said, hey, it's time to cut bait. We try to make a little Super Bowl run, but J.J. Watt's gone, DeAndre Hopkins gone, of course, Watt retired, Zach Allen, Byron Murphy, A.J. Green, Cody Ford, Max Garcia, Justin Pugh. Like everybody that was a key part of even the good teams of a couple of years ago are gone. I like their draft picks, but I don't think any of them are going to lead to any big like resurgence or, oh my God, the Cardinals have a team this year. I still think they're going to be historically bad.
Oh yeah, they're the bottom of my division pick too. I think they'll be historically bad this year, but I love that they have all these picks coming next year. So I assume Monty Ossenford and Jonathan Gannon are thinking long term here. They did get their tackle of the future in Paris Johnson, and they got BJ Ojulari from LSU. So I think they got a tackle and a defensive end. That'll be key pieces for next year because losing Zach Allen was big. He was supposed to be the next big star on defense for Arizona, and now he's gone. Hopkins gone, like you said. So, yeah, they lost a lot of players. I'm surprised Kazir White. He must have got a lot of money. I forgot what his contract was. I can't believe he's coming to Arizona knowing this is going to be a dumpster team for this year. I think they might have the number one pick this year. They do not look like they're going to be good at all.
But isn't he only like 27?
Oh, yeah. I mean, he's a young guy. He's really good, though. I would figure he would want to go to a team that's going to be in more contention. I mean, if I was Cowboys, I would take a look at him.
I kind of wonder if he's one of those that he's always good on average to below average teams, but when you put him on a great team and expect better results, he might not match up, because I know he was with the Eagles and the Chargers back-to-back years, and stat-wise, they look really good. I just wonder, and maybe he's thinking, hey, at 27, I can cash out my life now, and then I can be here for the rebuild.
Okay. Yeah, I was going to say. Carlos Watkins.
Yeah, either way, Cardinals going to be terrible.
Yeah. So I think we both agree they'll be probably one of the worst teams, if not the worst team this year.
Now, one thing I don't agree with everybody is everybody's hate for their uniforms. Now, I will say this: the all red, I don't like. And you and I have talked about this before. I don't like all of one color unless it's all white. No jokes. I don't like all red. I don't even like it in high school, but it's a high school look. I don't like that part. I really think they need to break up the red with the white pants or something. But other than that, man, they're all whites. Remind me of the 70s Cardinals. And you and I were just talking recently about how that's one of the most underrated uniform teams back in the day was the car because they were simple: red, white, white, and then on the road, all white. It was a beautiful look. So I don't agree that they're the worst uniform wise. All right, so now my third place team, and this might shock you. I have San Fran. No, I'm kidding. I have Seattle.
Wow.
Yeah, I think Seattle was one of the biggest fool's gold teams last year, and I know everybody is saying that hey, what they did is they set it up and they're going to let Geno cook this year. Yeah, but dude, even as great as he was, even everything he did right, they went 9-8, and at times that offense just looked like it could look great in one quarter and just absolutely crap for the next 3 quarters. I just don't trust in Geno to have that good of a year. I think he'll be perfectly fine, but I don't trust him that well. And in saying all that, I do like their draft picks. Devin Witherspoon, of course, Jackson Smith-Njigba, who we personally know, Zach Charbonnet, the running back at UCLA. I like all those picks, but I think the biggest thing is you defensively, your biggest draft or signing was simply bringing back Bobby Wagner, who is still a great player, but he's not Bobby Wagner of 2014.
So you and I vastly differ in this division, which is kind of exciting. I actually have Seattle winning this division
and being Francisco
being the number 2 seed.
So you have I like that because I have the Saints being the team I think can leap into that trifecta that everybody's talking about: Philly, Dallas, and San Francisco. Yeah. You think it's going to be the Seahawks? So tell me why.
John Snyder 10, 12 years ago, or 2010, 2011, I guess 09, 2010, 2011 had back-to-back great drafts.
Yep.
And they're basically doing it right now.
I agree. I think they drafted everybody exactly where they needed to be drafted.
And getting Devin Witherspoon, I think they'll have the best secondary in football. I don't see how they can if you look at the talent they have out there. Jackson Smith-Njigba is going to really help a veteran group on wide receiver. I'm drawing a blank. I'll Lockett. Sorry.
Yeah.
I was going to Lockett as a 2.
Lockett feels like he's going to be the odd man out because he's the oldest. And, it kind of felt like last year might be his last year, but he had such a good rebound year, especially the last, again, I know from fantasy football, like the last 8 weeks of the season, he was really hitting hot. So, yeah, I agree with that.
I really think with the addition of Julian Love and safety, Devin Witherspoon at corner, drafted Bobby Wagner, he might have one more good year in him. I agree with you. He's not the same guy.
But he's still great.
As he was. He's still great. Still one of the best linebackers of his generation. The big one is Draymond Jones from Denver. I really think they needed to shore up that defensive line. That was kind of a weakness for them last season. That's kind of why, along with their offensive issues, that's kind of why they went from 6-3 to 9-8. But I like everything. I like almost everything they've done in this offseason. I really think Geno will take another step forward. The offensive line has been improving the last couple of years. This is a team, and Zach Charbonnet, Charbonnet, he's going to be a great depth add to that backfield with the loss of Rashad Penny.
All right.
Yeah.
I've got it.
So, yeah. So you said they're going to be 3. I said they're going to be 1 in this division.
So tell me why San Francisco falls. Like, why why do you think? Because, I'm not saying you're wrong, but, a lot of people think that they're better this year than even their Super Bowl team of a couple of years ago. So why do you think they're not going to even win their division?
The losses on defense. You lose Jimmy Ward. You lose Azeez Al-Shaair. You lose Charles Omenihu. Samson Ebukam was a great depth player. You get Javon Hargrave. That's a great addition. That was like their one big offseason addition. Yeah. I think that was one of the only major one, really. They got Sam Darnold too, but he's more of a depth quarterback. Which is actually
yeah.
I take that back. That is a big signing because they have depth issues at quarterback. Yeah. So to me, it's all those defensive losses, and I can't trust Christian McCaffrey to play all 17 games this season. He was really healthy last season. I just don't see that happening in back-to-back years, given what happened to him the prior 3. So with that said, I still think they make the playoffs.
Yeah.
I still think they get double-digit wins, but
So
I
you're just
can't
that high
see
on Seattle more than you're low on San Francisco then.
Yeah, you know me. I love the way they play.
Yeah. No. Yeah, I agree. By the way, you didn't even mention maybe what San Francisco's biggest loss was, and that's D'Amico Ryans.
D'Amico Ryans, yeah, the new Houston Texans coach. They're going to Steve Wilkes is the new defensive coordinator for the 49ers, who's a really good coordinator. He kind of got shafted as a head coach for the Cardinals, but I think he's inheriting a great defense, and I think he'll have another great year or two with the 49ers and get head coaching offers, and then the next 2 to 3 years. But yeah, losing Mike McGlinchey on offense is going to also be a problem.
And
for
I
them.
know he hasn't. I don't know. He's one of those guys that, and there's nothing wrong with this. He came into the league as a 8 out of 10 player, and he's still just kind of there. Like I remember you and I talking about. First off, I love it because he's one of the ones that wear the old school with the 2 face masks across the bottom. He's one of the only ones that still wears that. But like it felt like his rookie year and where he is now, in what, year 5 or 6, he's the same player. Like, and that's not a bad thing, but there wasn't that development. There wasn't that kind of like Connor Williams for Dallas. Connor Williams came in and looked really solid his rookie year. You just felt, okay, if he can just add 20 pounds and get a little bit stronger, and then 2 years later you're like, okay, he's the exact same player. And so I don't know if that's going to end up being that might be an addition by subtraction, in my opinion.
Do you think Jimmy Garoppolo is a subtraction an addition by subtraction?
I've never understood the dislike of Jimmy G. I think he's a very solid quarterback. I think that, especially in this system, any guy that can make a read and throw the ball consistently is going to look good. But you're also going to look ugly at times, because this offense has a weird way of, you look at what they did against Dallas, and really both playoff games. They would look good for a quarter against Dallas, and Dallas's defense last year became a true top 5 defense. I don't think the year before. I still believe that the year before was a lot of fool's gold, but hey, that's fine. But even in that game, that second half, when it looked like the 49ers were one drive away from putting Dallas down, they couldn't pee a drop. And I know a lot of people say, well, that's Jimmy G. Okay, well, this last year you had Brock Purdy, and literally, look, you and I defend Dak, but as we said after the game, that defense did everything right. You can make the case that, if Diggs would have made the tackle on the bobble ball, or if he makes the interception, yes, but that's how football works. There's 5 plays per team that you have a what if. But Brock Purdy and that offense was effectively shut down by Dallas. That's why I'm way more confident going into this season if Dallas plays San Francisco than I was last year, because I felt that Dallas on the road at times defensively dictated that game.
Yeah, they were the better team for most of the game. I think losing Pollard during the game kind of crushed the Cowboys.
Or I think Kellen Moore, offensive coordinator, crushed the Cowboys, because I like him, but he still does the same thing in big games where it's 3 curl routes on a 5-yard pass. You don't ever feel like, man, he really came into this playoff game and did great things, because somebody says, well, what about Tampa? Dude, once Dallas got 2 scores up, you could tell Tom Brady was thinking about, well, I wonder if I can get her back, or maybe I can try to change.
Well, Dallas was in that backfield too.
Oh, yeah, they were living back there. And then offensively, Tampa Bay, you made the point. Tampa Bay's defense last year was not as good. People were still thinking of them in that Super Bowl and thinking that was the same defense last year, was the same players, but they were nowhere. They weren't even the same defense that Dallas had seen, at the beginning of the year. It was just completely different. But anyway, I like that. I like the Seattle pick, even though you're wrong. I do appreciate that. It makes me look better. All right, let's now go to our.
Oh, wait, whoa. What do you think about the Rams?
Oh, yeah, crap. I forgot to tell you. That was my whole thing. Well, just like everybody's forgot about the Rams. First off, the Rams are paying for their Super Bowl. For all the talk about Jerry and all, this is why Jerry has went against doing what the Rams did, because Jerry used to try this. He tried it in 2010. Well, no, it was 2008 when he brought Pac-Man Jones and Tank Johnson, and they were loading up for Bear because they had flamed out in the 2007 playoffs. Everybody thought, well, this is a Super Bowl contender. It didn't happen, and then you were still on the books for those guys for 2 years later. But in saying all that, I still like the Rams, man. I still think they have more than a puncher's chance. I know that they lose Jalen Ramsey, they lose Bobby Wagner. I think underrated, they lose Leonard Floyd. But if Matthew Stafford is healthy, that's going to be the big question. If Matthew Stafford is healthy, if Zach Evans can come in as a rookie running back, and you want to talk about being drafted perfectly, that's a guy that to me was the second best running back in the draft.
But no one remembers what he did at TCU. They think about how the freshman at Ole Miss, the school he transferred to, kind of outshone him. Kinshawn Judkins, he's already getting preseason All-American love.
And by the way, inside of an offense that throws the ball all over the place, Zach Evans still had really solid stats for Mississippi. But you're right.
Oh, yeah, because they're run first team, and so Judkins is going to get a majority of the carries, but Evans had a great year.
Yes. And but I like Mike LaFleur as the offensive coordinator. Again, I don't think that this team is a threat in the NFC. I think I could see them fighting for a playoff spot, but I think it's more. I think this whole division takes a step back, and so I have them around 8-9, 9-8. I have them in Seattle battling it out, and I have LA finishing second with an 8-9 or 9-8, and I have Seattle with like a 7-10, and then San Francisco above them.
Dude, yeah, Arizona finishing about 3-14, Rams maybe 6-11. I just can't see them doing well without. They only have a Stafford, Cup, and Donald on defense. Any decent defensive player is gone now. Ashawn Robinson.
Oh yeah, the whole team.
Yeah, so I see him taking a step back, but this must be a longer term project. The funny thing is Stetson Bennett, their later draft pick, the quarterback for Georgia, who won back-to-back championships.
Yeah,
he's getting a lot of love. That's
fine, and he's older than Matt Stafford. So no. Here's why I'm going to say this: I think Matt Stafford has his Super Bowl. I think last year the injury happened. But I just think that this is almost like a Detroit year for him. And he's talked before about, for all the talk about not making the playoffs, he goes, there was a certain part of that where no expectations, I could just fling it around. I see that guy coming back. And I just think he has one more year. And again, I'm not thinking they're if they make the playoffs, they're easy fodder. But I could just see them if you think San Francisco takes even a further back, or I think Seattle does, I could see them eking out a couple ugly wins and all that. And let's remember, for all the talk, they still have what I still think is a top 4 head coach in football right now. And I could just see them kind of everybody realizing this is that last ride. Let's just yeah. And I could just see the whole team we've got one more. Let's just shoot for the stars and let's see what happens. All right, now let's go to the NFC East. Last year did not count because the Eagles won the division. So last year, of course, the Eagles won the division. The Cowboys finished second. The Giants finished third. Washington finished fourth. All 4 teams were competitive. 3 teams made the playoffs. All 3 got at least one playoff win. 1 team was eliminated by a NFC East brethren. This felt like the old NFC East. But it also, to me, and I was saying this in week 5, 7, 15 in the first round of the playoffs, this just feels like a lot of fool's gold to me. So who do you have finishing? Go again, last to first. Give me yours.
Last place, I got the Giants. I think they'll finish 8-9. I really don't think Daniel Jones is going to be as good or as protected this year as he was last year.
Yeah.
Even with the additions of Darren Waller and Paris Campbell for depth, I really don't see it happen. No, I will say Bobby Okereke and Ashawn Robinson, who was my guy that I wanted the Cowboys to get because he was like the budget run stuffing defensive lineman. And I thought the Cowboys could have got him for $2 to $4 million. I really think those guys are going to shore up their run issues that they had, and it was kind of exposed in the playoffs by the Eagles. But yeah, having said all that, this is a quarterback-driven league, and I just don't see that Daniel Jones is going to be that guy. I don't think they should have given him all that money, but I think they felt that there was a little bit of pressure. They won a playoff game. They had a winning record. But I think they should have focused more on that divisional game against the Eagles.
That wasn't a big, it was a big money-wise, but it's not like they're in, what is like a 3-year deal?
I think 3 or 4. I think 4 years, 160, possibly.
I think that was actually the perfect what you give him. Okay, you might have 4-year 160. You might
And
have
honestly, I like everything else they did. I liked that they got Deonte Banks, the cornerback from Maryland. I like John Michael Schmidt, one of my favorite names now. He's going to be their future center.
Michael me. I'm sorry, what?
And they also got Cole Beasley, so he's going to be the other great depth. He might be the wide receiver one. Who knows?
Best rapper on the Giants this year. Yeah, you're right. Actually, you're right about that. I mean, if Waller stays healthy, I think Waller can be 1A from the wide receiver or from the tight end position. I like Jamison Crowder. Man, you would think if you're building around him, and Paris Campbell's okay, he's never quite developed. If you're signing him to a 4-year deal and you feel like you're drafting for Daniel Jones, you really didn't do a lot. Jalen Hyatt, wide receiver at Tennessee, man, wide receivers are just so. I will be honest. I usually can pinpoint players pretty good at positions outside of wide receiver from college to pro wide receiver. You just never know. It's just such a crapshoot depending on your system, injuries. Yeah. Do you just develop a little bit later, or you developed early? But I agree with you. I don't think that the Giants. I think Daniel Jones is not the answer. I do think though that if they can continue to play like they did last year, he can keep them in games as long as he uses his legs. And that's one thing underrated about him. Use his legs and keep the turnovers like he did last year to under 10. I think they're competitive. I have Washington last because at the end of the day,
what's the record?
Oh, like 4-13. Oh, wow. Maybe 5-12. I just don't like the quarterback. I'm gonna tell you right now, 99.9% of it is the quarterback. Also, they lost a lot of offensive line, and their defense isn't quite as scary as they were 2 years ago. And yeah, I know Eric Bieniemy is over there, and I think he's going to be fine as offensive coordinator. But this whole idea of, and I know people are going to say they saw him in practice, but they literally said, "Hey, we're giving Sam Howell a chance because he beat the Cowboys the last week of the season." First off, Dallas, yes, I know technically they were playing for something, but no, they weren't. I mean, everybody knew the Eagles weren't going to lose, so Dallas was locked in at their spot, and he didn't even play that great. It's not like he went out and threw for 275 yards and 3 touchdowns. He had a terrible QB rating. I think I just don't get that move. I like everything else that they've done. But put Daniel Jones on Washington. I think Washington's a playoff team this year.
I like everything Washington has done. This is the hardest one because I think so. From my perspective, I think Washington, Dallas, or Philadelphia could win this division.
Wow.
So it's really yeah, I'm really high on Washington. I like Eric Bieniemy a lot. I think he's gonna make them really good. And I love what Andrew Wiley did in the Super Bowl last year. He was a solid tackle throughout the season, but like what he did in the Super Bowl against Reddick, against Hargrave, I really like what he did there, and he was justifiably rewarded. Bieniemy knows him because they both came from Kansas City. I love the new center, Nick Gates.
Yeah, I do too.
I love the backup quarterback, Jacoby Brissett. He's a proven veteran quarterback. Manuel Forbes and Jartavius Martin are going to help with the secondary issues they had last season.
Yeah, that's going to take a while, man.
It will take a while. To me, the only question mark is quarterback. I have no idea how good Sam Howell really is.
How many weeks till Jacoby Brissett's the starting quarterback?
If they look like they're a team that's a quarterback away, he'll be starting by week 4 because they're not going to waste another season. This is kind of a make or break season for Ron Rivera.
Yeah, because I mean, you always talk about, hey, a coach has a new GM that didn't hire him. Well, they have a new owner that definitely didn't bring him in. I think that Ron Rivera. I'm speaking of. Hang on, real quick. What were your thoughts about Ron Rivera? Kind of what he said about Eric Bieniemy and the offensive players coming to him to complain, and that felt weird. Like that. Like Ron Rivera is not known as being like he's always been known as pretty much a coach-friendly coach. Like he lets you coach. Jack Del Rio's talked about it when you coach under him, he lets you do your thing. But man, it felt like he was kind of cutting Eric Bieniemy's legs out from under him a little bit.
Yeah, it almost seems like he feels a little threatened because Eric Bieniemy is providing a different voice and a different culture. and I don't know if these players are ready to adjust to it.
And he has
a proven track record, though, so they probably should listen to him.
Yeah, he has rings. And Ron Rivera, I know he took Carolina to a Super Bowl, but he didn't win it. And you can make the case that I never even thought about that. That's a really good possibility because that's just not so, like you had thought he'd have come out and said, yeah, players came to me and said, man, he's so tough. And I said, that's the way it should be. Instead,
and then he went back on that.
Yeah, then he went back on it. I was like, dude, what are you doing? Like,
exactly.
And I still will always pick out. You and I just say this all the time. Until that Super Bowl year, he was one of the most conservative punt when you're at the opponent's 40-yard line type of guy, and he threw it all to the wind for 1 year, and everybody calls him Riverboat Ron, and he's still the same coach. I just, at the end of the day, for me, it took Washington the last 2 years having a Herculean defense to keep them in games, and that defense has taken a step back. Now, yes, Chase Young might come in this year and be the Chase Young of old, and he's playing on he's playing a prove-it year and everything. But I don't think that – I think that secondary is going to be pretty bad, at least early. I think the linebackers are pretty average. I do think that defensive line is one of the toughest in the NFL if Chase Young is healthy. But I just don't – it just felt like they had to work really, really hard last year just to get every win that they got.
So I have them finishing third. Right. I think they'll finish with a 9-8 record.
All right.
I'm not sure it's good enough for Ron Rivera to keep his job. But if their offense is talented enough, I could see Eric Bieniemy being the head coach in 2024.
Oh, I do not like that.
And then I see Dallas and Philadelphia kind of flip-flopping. Right. So I have Dallas winning the division. Trying to not be biased here, but I don't like them. I like what the Eagles have done. Howie Roseman, great GM. He does have a penchant for Georgia players, but so happens all these Georgia players are really good. Jalen Carter, Nolan Smith, Keely Ringo, just from this draft alone.
Oh, yeah, good draft.
He's going to have Jordan Davis and Nakobe Dean starting at defensive tackle and linebacker respectively this season. So I like what they've done. Overall, they got, Illinois, they had the best defense in college last year. I didn't realize that. Because we kept seeing all these secondary players.
And we were laughing at first.
Yeah. And so they drafted Sidney Brown, who probably will be one of their starting safeties. Reed Blankenship was probably their weakest secondary player last season. Yeah. So I have Philadelphia finishing second. They lost their offensive coordinator, Stain Steichen, and defensive coordinator, Jonathan Gannon.
That's really hard to replace both and be just as good.
Yeah, and then it keeps going because they lost Javon Hargrave, T.J. Edwards, Miles Sanders, T.J. Gardner-Johnson, Kazir White, Isaac Seumalo. So the good thing is that he was the only – Isaac Seumalo, who was their guard, he was the only offensive lineman that left. Yeah. So they still have their elite offensive line.
But they're getting older.
They're getting older. I mean, I think their center, Kelsey, I think it's been his last year.
Yeah, I think everybody thought last year would be – I think if they'd have won, he might have went out like that.
And yet the left side will probably be there for another 5 years. Landon Dickinson, Dickinson and Jordan Mailata, that left side would be pretty good. And then I think the right tackle, Lane Johnson, he's on his last legs too. So he probably has another 1 or 2 years left. So, yeah, they're going to have to replace that line at some point. But I like what they've done in the draft. They lost a lot of key players and coaches last offseason. But I like that they got DeAndre Swift. He's a good change of pace back. He won't be the starter, but he'll be a really good compliment.
Yeah.
Mariota, very good. Hey. He was good at Atlanta last year.
Yeah.
More of a running.
I was going to say he fits Jalen Hurts' style. So if they need him for a couple games, I watched that NFL quarterbacks on that.
I watched the first episode with you.
Yeah. Yeah, well, I watched a couple on the beach. Well, actually, we watched like 4 episodes. I didn't realize that until we got to because we watched it. We were recording our high school stuff, and we watched it over at our friend Grant, my co-host in high school. And so I didn't know where we were per show, and so I started like, I've seen that. Went to episode 2. Oh, I've seen that. Realized we went 4 in. I think Mariota is one of those quarterbacks that if you give him 3 or 4 games in a season, you get the guy that's gonna rush when he needs to, and he's going to throw it deep. I think he has an issue when he becomes a starter. He tries to be too, like, I don't want to make mistakes. And so
Yeah.
I think he is a perfect backup for good teams. If Hurts get hurt, you've got him for a game or two.
You're waiting for that.
Yeah, I was. But I have the Cowboys too. Not trying to be a homer. Mainly, I'm just going with the NFC East hasn't had a repeat
history.
Yeah, I mean, nobody felt last year that the Eagles were going to step up this big. Everybody, and again, for all the talk, I think people think in their minds, partly because it's the Cowboys. I think people think in their minds that the Eagles like ran away with the division and the Cowboys just got lucky to get in the playoffs. It was a 2-game lead technically, but again, last week changed all that. But I mean, the Cowboys were 12-5. I mean, it wasn't like they were 9-8 or 10-7. And everything they did in the offseason made Dallas better. Like, there's not one weakness coming into this offseason that I feel they didn't address in some ways. Now, we can talk about things like O-line depth, but hey, guess what? It's salary cap. You've got to make decisions. And you have to just go, okay, we're going to be short in some spots. So, but I love what Dallas did. I think just simply Brandon Cooks and Gallup having year 2 back from the knee injury, I think that immediately makes Dallas one of the best wide receiver cores. And folks, and I know it's preseason, but look at what Jalen Torbert's done both games. He is making big catches. I don't watch preseason, so I just look at the stats and then watch the highlights. But he had some big catches against Seattle. He had a couple good ones against Jacksonville. I know
Well, I mean, it's not your fault. They decreased the preseason to 3 games.
Thank you.
They're basically telling you how unimportant they are.
Yeah, and well, we can talk about injuries, and one of the negatives of preseason football for Dallas is they had. Yeah. I know a lot of people are saying 2 big injuries. Look, the tight end from TCU was having a solid camp, but I don't see him. At best, he was getting practice squad.
I mean, they're going to invest in the guys they had last year, plus Luke Schoonmaker.
Exactly, and I think all 3 of them. I think one thing I have enjoyed watching the highlights is you might not see one tight end have 80 catches. It might be like, who are we talking about on one of the shows? Maybe it was Seattle. Somebody last year I read a stat like, if you looked at one of their tight ends, they didn't have great stats, but if you looked at all 3 of them and combined them, they had an all-pro tight. And I think Dallas will do that as well. But Demarion Overshawn is going to hurt. But in saying that, it wasn't like he's the guy that puts that defense over the top. He was a home run draft pick because he was still there in that round. This isn't Micah Parsons. I know people want to get a little excited, but this wasn't Micah Parsons 2.0. I think Overshawn's going to have a great NFL career and be impactful, but I wasn't expecting a ton in the fall.
With Overshawn is more of his versatility.
Exactly.
And how, I didn't think about it when I was watching college games with you, but in the pros, I'm like, he could line up all over that field and it won't be a weakness for the team.
No, and you put him, and again, it'll be next year. You put him and Parsons on the field together and things get scary. And I don't think it'll happen, but if Parsons' contract issue becomes a big deal, I'm not saying Overshawn would be as good as him, but it's at least somebody that you could do the same kind of things with, if that makes sense.
I'm also on Deuce Vaughn. I like to see what he does with the Cowboys this year. I mean, he won't be a lead back, but he'll be a guy that's going to get 5 to 10 snaps a game.
I think the biggest question for Dallas, and I know Mike McCarthy keeps saying that they're going to run the ball more and all that. How with this offense? First off, as much as you and I joke about Kellen Moore, I never had a problem with the pass to run ratio. Dallas was a top 5 team the last 5 years in rush attempts. My issue with him was when it came into big games or against really good defenses, he just never seemed to have a real wrinkle.
I mean, like I was telling you, every week, one of the stats I was tracking was rushing attempts. Whenever Dallas had a certain amount of rushing attempts, they were undefeated, or I think they had 1 loss.
Yeah, but that's, again, I agree with that thing, but you also usually have that many rushing attempts because you're up. And so that's that chicken or egg type thing that I don't think we'll ever figure out.
I think the Green Bay game was the one game they lost where they had a bunch of rushing attempts.
Yeah, and that was just a weird game that just, you kind of look back and you realize, as much as we always joke about Green Bay back in the 90s couldn't beat Dallas in Dallas, Dallas has a hard time beating Green Bay in Green Bay, period. Doesn't matter if it's really cold or not. But I do think the biggest, and I'm going to say it's a mistake because you got to sign who's available. You got to draft who's available. The Cowboys need a true running back too. And I'm not ready to say that Malik Davis is, I know a lot of people are big on him. I would like to see them pick up somebody off the scrap heap when the cuts happen here in a couple of weeks. I'm not really.
I don't think Ronald Jones is a running back.
No. 3 years ago, so for people that don't know, if you live in Dallas, and you might not even know, because not everybody that follows Cowboys follows high school football, but Ronald Jones is from McKinney. He played high school in McKinney. And my Kevin McPherson, you know him well. He does a lot of stuff with us on high school and things. That's where he teaches, and he also runs PA and stats for the McKinney schools. So 3 years ago, we were talking about, man, when Ronald Jones ends that rookie contract, I sure would love to see him on the Cowboys. Yeah, no, I don't. I mean, he's just, you want to talk about slowed down? I don't know what happened, but from year one to where he looked like that darting quick running back. You and I always joke about Michael Turner. He's still the only running back that I know that went from burner Turner to dump truck Turner, and it worked both ways. No, I don't think Ronald Jones is your 1B. I mean, if he proves that, hey, prove it. But I would love, and I don't want Leonard Fournette either, because he looks slower than Zeke. I was really still kind of secretly hoping that Dalvin Cook fell to Dallas, that he would sign a 1 year, $10 million deal because nobody would pick him up. And then the Jets basically signed him for a 1 year, $10 million damn deal, which is exactly what I was hoping. But I do hope I think Dallas has got to address the running back.
I thought they would re-sign Zeke, but he went to the Patriots. So, I mean, we'll talk about both those guys next week.
Well, by the way, our AFC preview show will be recorded a week after this. I don't know exactly what day I'm putting this one up yet. So when you see it, you see it. I just feel I like Dallas. I think their defense is legit. I think that the Gilmore signing, I think as big as the Brandon Cooks trade was, the Gilmore trade was even better. And I think people don't realize that both of these guys, barring injuries, could play for a couple years for Dallas. This isn't, I mean, I know people are saying veteran one and done. Gilmore's already talked about, like, he would love to transition. You know, he realizes he's at a certain point in his age, and he would love to transition into more of just a, safety / corner / third down guy. Dude, I'd love to have Gilmore as my third down guy, even next year at 32. Yeah. And then Brandon Cooks has talked about, I feel like I still have legs to play 2 or 3 more years. I think if you find a running back, and it doesn't have to be anybody special, just you cannot expect Pollard. I don't know if you could have expected Pollard, period, to come in and do 350 rushing attempts, but especially after his injury last year.
Yeah, and it's the same thing with every NFL team. You have to have 2 starting capable running backs. You really don't want to run them dry. I mean, now today's NFL, it might be more of, okay, we're going to play this running back for 5 years, not going to give him a fat contract, draft another guy. But if you want to win a Super Bowl, you're going to have 2 capable running backs, maybe 400 touches combined, 2,000 combined yards. Like that's kind of the recipe success in today's NFL. You need depth. Depth is a key thing.
Yeah, and I do really, really hope that Dallas picks up some O-line depth, because I love their first 5 if Smith can play. And not Tyron Smith. If he can play and be healthy, but he hasn't been. He's missed 30 games in the last 5 years or whatever it is, and they've got to stop. At some point, it's become a bigger saying, but it was always there. Your biggest asset is availability. I don't care how great you are if you can't play. And so I think Dallas has got to get, and if you get the right depth behind him, then he could still play a couple more. Again, it's not like Smith is 35. He might have the legs of 35, 36 years old, but let's not forget, he still, if he could just stay healthy, he's still got a 3 to 5 year career left if he stays healthy. And I just don't think he can. All right, we're going to wrap this up with our playoff picks in the NFC. I like yours. I'm just now seeing yours for the first time. Holy crap. So intern Noe has Dallas 13-4, Seattle 12-5, Detroit 11-6, Atlanta 10-7, Philadelphia 12-5, San Francisco 11-6, and Minnesota making the playoffs at 9-8. You have wild card Seattle versus Minnesota, San Francisco versus Detroit, and Atlanta versus Philadelphia. You have Seattle, San Francisco, and Atlanta winning. I like what you did in the divisional round. You have Dallas beating San Francisco. You have Seattle beating. So first off, I was going to say this. If we get to the last weekend in the NFC, and that's your matchups, and Dallas doesn't win, I might become a golf fan and just fucking quit football altogether. Hang up my shoulder. Next year, it'll be a little golf bag right here. It'll be outdrink the putter. I just, if that's the team that if just beat San Francisco, oh man, I would go butt shit crazy. But you have Dallas winning the NFC and playing in the Super Bowl. All right, I have Dallas as the number 1 seed. I have San Francisco as the number 2 seed. I have the Saints as the number 3 seed. I have. I'm trying to pull up my notes here. Sorry, hang on. I'm freezing.
Whoever the North champ is going
to be. No. Yeah, that's right. Okay, that's right. Yeah, I have Minnesota as the 4th seed. Sorry, I have San Francisco as the 5th. No, Philadelphia is the 5th seed, and then I have Minnesota as the 6th seed, and then I have man, this is the one I left blank because I wasn't really sure. Because the biggest issue I was having, my biggest issue with filling out that last one was the development of Chicago or the development of Carolina. I'm going to go and stick with Chicago because that's what I said in the thing. So, I'm just going down. I didn't do you do all the wild card. I don't ever do that. I'm terrible about that. I have.
Well, we know which seed is going to play which. So you can just go ahead and say San Francisco is a 2 seed. Who are they playing? Chicago?
No, they would play. Wait, was it 1 versus? Wait,
it's 2 versus.
Yeah, it's 2 versus 7. So yeah, they'd play Chicago. You're right. San Francisco would beat them. I have the Saints beating Minnesota. That's all right. God damn, I gotta pay attention to this more. No, that's right. And then I have Philadelphia. That's right. No, that's right. I got it right. And then I have Philadelphia winning their game. And then the third round, I've got Dallas beating Philadelphia. I have the San Francisco 49ers beating. Who did I have? Seven beating? I'm trying to do all the numbers. Huh? Chicago. Huh?
Well, San Francisco beat Chicago
in the first round. That's what I'm saying. So I'm going 6, 2, 3. So it'd be Minnesota. I'm right. Okay, that's right. San Francisco beat Minnesota. Then I have in the divisional round, I have Dallas beating Philadelphia. I have San Francisco beating New Orleans, and then I have Dallas. That's the one I missed in the wild card, New Orleans, and I have Dallas beating San Francisco in the title game. I have them finally winning that game in the NFC title game.
That'll be 3 years in a row. Dallas will play San Francisco.
And what happened the last time? 3 years in a row. San Francisco,
the team that lost the first 2 won the third one.
It's kind of weird because technically that should be just as great as a rival. Sports are weird now. It should be just as awesome, but I guess because those were all in the NFC title games, maybe. But that's not embraced enough. You and I have talked about sports is weird right now. Like everything is you either win a championship or you're trash. Rivalries for some reason aren't like they used to be. Like I don't get excited about playing. As a Cowboy fan, I just fear playing any good team. But whether they've won 2 or lost 2, that's it. We should be like, yeah, we want to play San Francisco in the playoffs. Yeah. I want San Francisco to wheels fall off. They fire everybody. They go 3-14, and let's move on. But I don't know. It's just football's weird nowadays. I keep saying it more and more. I sit there and was reading something about college and rivalries and stuff, and people were talking about how that A&M Texas rivalry won't be a rivalry unless both teams are. And I'm like, I'm sorry, do y'all know that rivalry? It don't matter what those teams are doing, especially that first game since 2012. But anyway, so you and I both have Dallas going to the NFC, being the NFC representative. I hate that because it comes off as Homer.
Yeah.
Yes, they've got to answer questions. Dak's got to play a little bit more conservative, though I still like to point out to people, everybody talk about, he led. Yeah, but also look at his stats from when he came back. Touchdown, yards, completion. All of them were he led the league. I get the interceptions. I also think just like 1-score games, a lot of those are kind of fluky that I don't think is going to happen again.
It's a 3-team race. And I think Philadelphia, they lost too much.
Well, it's just look at what teams that go to the Super Bowl and lose, what happens? They don't get back the next year or get back again. We'll see.
Jalen already mocked them off. And then San Francisco, I can't trust that their best players will be healthy for the whole year. You saw what happened in the NFC title game. I'm still not sure if Brock Purdy is their guy, given the amount of game tape now that teams have.
That's a really good point.
Yeah, I mean, we're well prepared for him in 2023 whenever he comes back healthy. And they might want Trey Lance after all. Who knows what San Francisco's
And you still got Sam Darnold, who I still do not think is a terrible quarterback. I think he just got drafted by a terrible team and a team at the time that wasn't ready to develop. And I could easily see him being the comeback player of the year and having like a really special year, because there's a lot that Sam Darnold does that I really, really like. Now, the question is, does he move around? Oh, and I wanted to say that about Dak. We got to get pre-broken ankle Dak running around more. I get the idea if you want to hold and try to have the pass downfield, and that's great. But there were so many times last year in that San Francisco game that if he just takes the 5 yards, goes from 1st and 10 to 2nd and 5 or 2nd and 7. Oh, I didn't mean to pull that back up. From 2nd and 7 to 3rd and 2. But he wouldn't do it. And that's the thing that Dak is missing. When a defense is shutting you down run-wise and pass-wise, the quarterback scrambling can completely change because their linebackers have to start stepping up. It forces a gap between them and it's so many things you can do with that. So I really do think that part of what Dak needs to do to be a better quarterback is run more. He doesn't need to run for 800 yards, but I wouldn't mind seeing that Dak that had like 8 touchdowns on the ground, because you just never knew what he was going to do 10 yards in.
That's a great point. I would love to see him running more. That was one of their keys to success in 2016 when they were 13-3. But yeah, anyway, like I was saying, the reason why I'm picking Philadelphia or San Francisco is because I don't think they'll repeat what they did last year. There's question marks at key positions. And so Dallas is just by default should be the best team.
Yeah.
But of course, it's been too many years, since Dallas has made it to the Super Bowl or even the conference championship game. So I really don't know, but by default, I'm going to say Dallas just based off what I already said.
All right. So who will the Dallas Cowboys play in the Super Bowl? We'll talk about that on the next episode. I no matter what, I like the fact that you think Seattle makes that jump up. I think the Saints. It's funny that you and I on our own division, which we probably know the best, are pretty much completely different, because you and that. And I agree with everything about the Washington thing except for the quarterback. And I do think in this division, you can't start slow. I mean, that's the one thing that the Cowboys and the Eagles, you give them both credit for, is they come out and Dallas loses the first game, it seems like, but then they always end up 4-1. But both of those teams seem to get going and put space behind them and everybody else. So that's one of the reasons. But other than that, you and I on the NFC, man, we're all over the place. But it's not because of all these great teams. It's because of all the uncertainty. I think next week we're going to be all over the place on the AFC, but I think it's because they just have better teams top to bottom. I think the NFC top 3 can play with anybody in the AFC, but where the AFC wins is that 4th down, I think would come over in the NFC and be like the number 2 seed easily.
And if you rank the quarterbacks in the NFL, I think a lot of the top ones are going to come from the AFC.
Dak Prescott, Cooper Rush, Will Grier. Okay, that's no, you're right. And again, as you keep bringing up, for all the talk about Atlanta going to run more and the Bears are going to run more and Dallas is supposed to run more, this is a quarterback league. And your quarterback, when you have a good quarterback, and again, that's why I go back to Washington. When you have a good quarterback, boy, they can make up a lot of deficiencies, because that Chiefs defense was not super special last year. They were good.
Think about what Joe Burrow does with that crappy offensive line in Cincinnati.
Yeah. We're going to look back 5 years from now, and he's going to be still sitting in that same spot, and it's going to be because they're not building that offensive line around. I mean, they're putting everybody else, give them credit. They're giving him wide receivers and stuff, but yeah, they got to work out that offensive line. All right, that's going to do it for this episode. Again, you can find us on YouTube at L4 Media Company. Find us on Facebook. Just type in Outdrank the Coverage. Find us on Twitter at OutDrankYou. You can also email us, odtcnfl@gmail.com. Until next time, he's intern Nohe. I'm Terry Bennett, and this has been Outdrank the Coverage.